Football fans? New York Giant fans? Dallas Cowboy fans? What? Did you hear the story about Jerry Jones this week? He's the owner of the Cowboys, for those of you who are not football oriented. Jerry Jones dressed up for Halloween. You didn't hear this? Raise your hand if you heard it. There's one. Two. He put on black slacks, a referee's shirt, you know, the stripes, a pair of those shaded glasses that blind people wear. You getting the picture? And a cane. You getting the picture? I thought it was hilarious. The commissioner of the NFL have said he's facing possible fines. It's Halloween. What is he? I mean, don't you get a little upset when people kind of overstretch their power, when they just try to do too much? I mean, it's Halloween. Leave the guy alone. It's not like he did it during halftime, walked out on the field. He just, somebody took a picture of him. I think he was up in his box seat or something. Who didn't see it? Raise your hand. So this is how a big deal it was. 90% of you didn't see it. Don't you just hate it when people push like that? It's just so irritating. King Antiochus, in today's first reading from 2 Maccabees, he was that kind of powerful leader. He, first of all, the people who were ruling the rest of the world in the 3rd and 4th century, 2nd and 3rd century BC, were all the generals of Alexander the Great. You remember from history class, Alexander the Great died in the year 323 BC. You knew that. And his kingdom, I don't think he had any heirs, his kingdom was divided among all his generals. And Antiochus is one of the generals, his family, his lineage, part of the people who inherited part of the conquest of Alexander the Great. And he was a very strict authoritarian ruler. He wanted everything done his way. And so what he issued an edict for was everyone had to live the Greek way. They were descendants of Alexander the Great and other Greeks, and so they had to live according to Greek customs, which is what we're hearing in the first reading today from 2 Maccabees. Some of the Jewish people, even under the threat of death, said, no, we are not going to violate our commandments. We are going to do what God has told us to do. And even to the point where they knew they would be martyred if they didn't obey what they were told to do, because King Antiochus wanted cultural uniformity. He went so far as to put pagan statues and idols in the Jewish temple. He defiled the temple. He offered sacrifices to these idols in the temple. Nothing to the Jewish people would have been greater desecration than that kind of behavior. And here are these 7 brothers and their mother who are willing to die and remain and be faithful to their Jewish customs of refusing to eat pork. How many of us would have that kind of courage? Listen, take a bite of the hot dog and get it over with, and then nobody else is going to know. Who's going to know? I mean, God would know, but who? Big deal. But they were so faithful, they faced death. And think about, especially in the Albany area, with the Voorheesville Shrine not all that far away, think about the missionaries who came to this country 400 or 500 years ago. They knew they were coming to die. They knew they were never going to go back home. They knew that coming here to bring the faith to Native Americans was going to be a very dangerous task, mostly ending in martyrdom. Do you know what the martyrdom is? A Greek word for? Thank you. It means witness, and we're all called to give witness to our faith. Does that mean we die? Thank goodness, no. It simply means we give witness to our faith. And they were willing, courageously, to give witness to their faith and suffer the cruel martyrdom meted out by King Antiochus. The other lesson in today's first reading was that these 7 brothers and their mother believed that when they died here on earth, there would be a resurrection. There would be a new life. That was not the typical belief of the Jewish people. Typically, in the Old Testament, the Maccabees and the Book of Wisdom, 2 or 3 books which are not included in the Jewish Bible or the Protestant Bible, most of them were the newest books of the Old Testament. They were written in the 1st, 2nd, and sometimes early 3rd century BC. They were not included in the Jewish Bible, which was only codified in the 1st century AD, and they didn't use these books in their Bible because they were written in Greek, not in Hebrew. And when the Protestants made their Bible in the 1500s, 1600s, they used the Jewish version of the Bible rather than the Catholic version of the Bible from St. Jerome. So these readings from Maccabees do not appear in the Protestant Bible, they do not appear in the Jewish Bible. But by the 1st and 2nd century BC, 100, 200 years before the time of Jesus, the Jews, the ancient Israelites, began to believe in something greater than simply the abode of the dead. Whenever Moses or some famous Jewish leader died, he went to be with his ancestors. Nobody knew. He went to the abode of the dead. But by the 1st and 2nd century before the time of Jesus, people began to believe there's got to be something better than the abode of the dead, whatever that might be. And they began to believe in the possibility that there was a new life, a greater life, a life that was immortal, a life that would last forever. And that's part of the lesson in today's first reading from the 2nd book of Maccabees. It's a lesson to remind them and us that as wonderful as life is here, there's a greater life that awaits us after we pass from this world. And so we come to the gospel, this gospel passage where Jesus is tested by the Sadducees. It's really as much, I'll say, a political question as it is as a theological question. The Sadducees are asking Jesus, basically, do you believe in the resurrection? And the Sadducees, just for comparison's sake, don't fall out of your pew. Let's call them Democrats and Republicans. The Sadducees believe there is no resurrection. The Pharisees believe there is a resurrection. And so when the Sadducees posed this problem to Jesus, weird problem, a woman who marries 7 times and is a widow 7 times, look out, guys. So it's a crazy question. What the Sadducees want to know is not whose wife will she be. They want to know, who do you agree with? Do you agree with the Pharisees or do you agree with the Sadducees? What side are you on? It's a sociological, theological, political question, wanting to know where Jesus stands in terms of the theology of resurrection in the later Jewish society. And Jesus answers the question the only way it could be answered. You're thinking earth terms. I'm talking about heavenly terms. The life that we live here on earth is not the life that we're going to live in heaven. Sorry for those of you who were married 7 times. You won't have 7 wives when you get to heaven, or 7 husbands when you get to heaven. So Jesus answers their question again because they're looking for uniformity. They're looking for consistency in the religious life of ancient Israel. They want everyone to believe and to live the same way. And from King Antiochus, 200, 300 years before the time of Jesus, into today, is there uniformity in the world today? Is there uniformity in the church today? Is there uniformity anywhere in the world today? And people like the NFL commissioner, people like King Antiochus, and other people, not Jesus, but other people, are striving for that kind of unity, and Where is Alexander the Great today? Where is Julius Caesar today? Where is Adolf Hitler today? Where is Joseph Stalin today? Where are all of these people who tried to control the world and make the world believe only in what they believed, and if you didn't believe what they believed, you would be done away with? If, let's call them dictators, if dictators have learned that through the centuries, how do people look or try to achieve unity today? It's much more subtle, much more subtle. We're trying to be, well, we're not. Someone is trying to create a world where everyone lives and believes the same thing. You think that could happen someday? Given what human nature is, I'd say probably not. But the beginnings for that kind of uniformity began in the 1960s, when prayer was banned from schools. When prayer was banned from, because God was being pushed aside and everyone was going to put those thoughts of God out of their head. And, well, God doesn't belong in public school anyway. Nobody got too upset. But then later, you can't put a nativity set at City Hall anymore because it's a demonstration of faith, and we can't do that. We can't mix faith and politics. We can't mix church with state. And ever since those days, things have gone downhill. Things have gone to the point where you can't go to church during COVID, which I believe, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that was a violation of the Constitution. You cannot ban the practice of religion. But for this public safety, we kind of went along with it. But it's a step in the wrong direction. I understand, I'm sure that most of us here know someone who died of COVID. That's not a good thing. I'm not suggesting that it is. But so much of what's happening in our culture today is a culture that says we don't have time, we don't have room, we don't have space for God in our daily lives. We can talk about church attendance. This is an awfully big church for so few people. Don't take offense. Was it built this big because it was bigger 10 years ago? I mean, we can talk about COVID, but we all know that long before COVID came, church attendance was on its way down. Church attendance was on its way down. People don't have time for church today. People have better things to do. People can find something else to occupy their time. They can find something else to believe in, whatever that might be. Like instead of Almighty God, the Almighty dollar. Instead of idol worship, we have American Idol. We have all of these theological terms that remind us of God's presence, but we're not really living in God's presence today. That's the problem when someone thinks that we all have to be the same, that we all have to think the same, act the same, believe the same. That's never really going to happen. The dictators of old couldn't accomplish it, and what's his name, the NFL commissioner? Is it Goodell? I don't know. Who is he? Who's got the football here? I don't know his name. Whatever. Anybody here a Brooklyn Dodger fan? Oh, come on. Somebody goes back. Nobody here? Yeah. I got my Brooklyn Dodger yearbooks. Gladys Gooding. Gladys Gooding was the organist at Ebbets Field. And if the umpire called a pitch a ball when the Brooklyn Dodger pitcher thought it was a strike, or when the umpire called a Brooklyn Dodger runner out at second base when the Dodgers thought he was safe, Gladys Gooding on the organ would play Three Blind Mice. And you know what? The commissioner of baseball did not threaten to sue her, to fine her, to suspend her. That's how our world has been turned upside down. You can't joke anymore. You can't have a sense of humor anymore. You can't challenge authority. It never works. People who try to dictate the way we live, the way we think, the way we act, inevitably lose. Inevitably they lose. But you can't convince them of that typically while they're still alive. On the other hand, can I get a witness? Can I get a martyr? Can I get someone who will go out and give witness to their faith? Adrian, get ready. And he fell asleep already. Well, it's okay. He's got a few years to get ready. But we need to remember that. We are called to be witnesses to the world today. We are called to be the martyrs of the world today. We are called to be the ones whose faith is visible, not in here. Our faith has to be visible out there. If all we do is gather on Saturday afternoon for an hour, that is not going to change the world. Taking this nourishment that we receive here and putting it into daily practice in our lives, how we live our lives, that's what giving witness to the faith is. That's what our mission is. Our mission is to combat those people who have an idea that God doesn't matter. God does matter. And he matters not just for 1 hour, he matters for every day, every minute of our lives.